How long are you willing to wait until you get a
Well, don't
unified
rush me.
response?
Don't rush me, Jeff. I hope the fake news people like you, I hope the fake news are going to be able to write about it accurately, because when you say, oh, they're fighting very well, they're not fighting well. They've been obliterated, Jeff, obliterated. If you read the New York Times, the failing New York Times, subscriptions are way down, as you know. We have no pressure. It's only guys like you with a question like that about what's your time.
What do you say to the American people who question how much longer this will take? Obviously, you know that they are having higher...
You're such a disgrace. Did you hear what I just said?
So if you're asking for more time to sort out
I'm
negotiations
not
with
asking you
Iran,
for more time. I'm not asking for them. No,
But
it's
if
not
you
more
need
time.
more time-
I'm not asking anybody for more time.
If you're
The stock
1 year-
market is at an all-time high right now.
Right.
I thought it would have been down 20,
But you
25%.
wanted
When
to
we
drive
hit, wait a
prices
minute,
down
wait,
this
can
year.
I finish my question, wise guy?
Wow, I tell you, tomorrow night's White House Correspondents' Dinner, Willie, I kind of look at it as a scene kind of like the end of It's a Wonderful Life, where everybody, he gets Zuzu's pedals and they get around the Christmas tree and they're singing old lang syne. I mean, this is going to be a hoot. The president getting together with a group of people that he loves and admires as much as he loves and admires the press.
Deep respect, and so many members of his cabinet who share his respect for the press will be seated at the tables in the room that night. I mean, the fragility on display in the last two clips, the end, what Sam Stein just showed of the president going out of his way to say that his crowds were bigger than those for Martin Luther King during the I Have a Dream speech. And then the inability, those were not gotcha questions in the Oval Office about the war with Iran. Those were very basic questions about where the war is headed and a timeline that he's been setting timelines again and again, 2 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. It doesn't inspire confidence, let's just say that.
Well, yeah, and you know, the questions are really important questions, and they're questions that not only we need to hear domestically, but also that the Iranians need to hear, instead of the president popping off and asking like they asked a ridiculous question. I mean, it's very important for Americans to understand, for the Iranians to understand that the president's going to stay in this for as long as it takes to get the deal that America and the world needs, or to say he's going to come home. Those are the most legitimate questions ever, and I think it really just suggests that he's now been so insulated inside the White House that even questions like that seem unfair, because he's got people in the cabinet coming up to him every second of every day, and advisors telling him every day how great he is. You're wonderful, sir. Yes, sir. This is going perfectly, sir. Sir, this is so good. And so he's asked, seriously, is, I think, a basic question, as you said, and also a very important question. And he's talking about fake news and the New York Times subscriptions. I will just say, as a matter of fact, the New York Times is doing as well or better than they ever have. They are one media outlet that hasn't capitulated to this administration, and they're being rewarded for it in a pretty extraordinary way by 2026 standards. The Washington Post, not so much. The Wall Street Journal, owned by Rupert Murdoch, a conservative newspaper on the editorial pages, doing extraordinarily well because they are still a conservative editorial page, but a conservative editorial page that has taken this administration to task time and time again when it's deserved. We're going to play for you more of the president's comments, as he seems to have given up on any timeline for ending the war with Iran. And I will say, it's a good thing that he's not rushing for the exits while the Iranians are saying they're not going to negotiate. Keep the blockade up, at least for a little while longer. Meanwhile, there's some positive news tied to the Middle East. After Israel and Lebanon agreed to extend their ceasefire for more than 3 weeks, but also more terrible killings coming out of that country, especially with members of the media. We're going to talk about that. Plus, we're going to go through the surprising arrest of a soldier who's accused of using classified information to win hundreds of thousands of dollars through an online betting market. I'm telling you, this is so corrosive. The betting, the legalized betting, the legalized marijuana, the legalized this, legalized that they, you know, that the administration yesterday was announcing. It's like guardrails are off. And this is coming from a so-called conservative administration. There's nothing, and I've been saying this for a decade, conservative. Nothing conservative about this. It's all radicalism. Also with us on this happy Friday, we hope you're having a wonderful Friday. The co-host of our 9 a.m. hour, staff writer at The Atlantic, Jonathan Lemire, a Boston Red Sox fan. TJ, we really need the cartoon trombone. That anytime we say the Boston Red Sox this year, we need the wah, wah, wah. So if you can dial that up, because I know if I said Biff Pocoroba, for instance, we would have a picture of Biff Pocoroba's baseball card popping up. But we need the Red Sox trombone. There's Biff right there. And in Atlanta's stellar 1970s spring training facilities, Willie, which throughout the 1970s, a little late, TJ, the Braves would lose 100 games a year. You can't figure out why with the training facility they have. We also have managing editor. Now, TJ, here's your chance. We have managing editor of the Bulwark, Sam Stein. Sam is such a Red Sox fan that we actually went to Game 6 of the 2013 World Series, but he's a Red Sox fan now. There you go.
Good job, TJ.
I think we need a third one. And finally, we have co-founder, CEO, Grand Poobah of Axios, Jim Vandehei. Jim has nothing to be sad about today. All going well. So Willie, we're going to get into Iran. There's so much to talk about in Iran, but also so much to discuss right now about where the president's standing, not only with Democrats, but mainly with independents and even some Republicans. There was a Fox News poll out yesterday that shows the single issue that matters most to Americans is a single issue where Republicans are doing the poorest.
And it's tied to the war. The latest Fox News poll shows Americans growing increasingly pessimistic about the state of the U.S. economy. 70%, 70, believe the economy is getting worse. That's up 15 points from this time last year, matches a previous record high. Twice as many say the president's policies are hurting the economy as opposed to helping. And a majority say grocery and gas prices, along with healthcare and housing costs, are a major problem. On the top issues, a combined 43% cite inflation, affordability, or the economy as their top concern. The issue of immigration trailing far behind there. So, Jonathan Lemire, obviously this is directly tied to the war, the inflation that's come in just the last 8 or 9 weeks or so as a result of the Strait of Hormuz being closed, which Donald Trump says the United States is in complete control of the Strait of Hormuz. That's objectively not true. He said that yesterday. This is a problem, not just the morass that has become the war, but the domestic problems that come with it.
No question. And to Joe's point, there are many analysts who say, yes, it's good that President Trump isn't cutting and running from the war in Iran because of the mess it would leave behind and leave Iran fully in control of the Strait of Hormuz. But something has to give. And he can talk as much as he wants about how, well, we use it less. And it's true, American ships use it less than others, but the energy economy is a global economy. The oil market's a global market. We're all feeling it. And it's not just energy. We're seeing prices rise across the board, and that poll suggests people are deeply unhappy. And we also shouldn't forget, of course, that when Trump won in 2024, that was his signature promise. I'm going to bring prices down. And he's done exactly the opposite here. And he also, by focusing on the sort of international adventurism, Jim Vandehei seems like he's out of touch. And I think that's what these polls reflect as well, that Democrats, independents, and even we're seeing some Republicans growing dissatisfied with his stewardship of the nation, saying what he cares about, and that is clearly enriching himself and his family, and also clearly trying to create a legacy, whether that's redrawing the world's maps or building ridiculous arches in Washington, D.C. He cares about those things and not the things that actually matter to our lives.
Yeah, and you need to put the polls in some context. It's almost impossible in modern polling, given the ideological impulses of base voters, to get much lower than he is in terms of his unfavorable ratings, but also how unpopular he is when it comes to the economy, when it comes to inflation, even when it comes to, the non-border enforcement part of immigration. Like, he is very, very low. Still has Republicans, most Republicans with him, but that's even sinking. And I think the biggest alarm for him and for Republicans is they look at the House map and it looks like almost impossible for them to keep control of the House. They look at the Senate and they start to look at states like Iowa, Ohio, Alaska, Texas, Maine, all which should be very, very winnable, maybe not even competitive, and they all look suddenly in danger. To me, the most interesting thing is talking to people around the president. Their language and body language has changed markedly in the last 2 months. They know they're in a huge hole and it's going to be really, really hard to get out of it. They don't even really defend it anymore. They understand that we're here by a series of choices that the president made by himself. How to prosecute this war was his choice. To do tariffs the way he did was his choice. To unleash ICE into neighborhoods before ICE was properly trained to do it was his choice. To then promote that in a very chest-thumping type of way was his choice. And now Republicans are having to pay for that. And I don't think you're going to see Republicans in Congress necessarily like turn on him in force. But I can tell you right now, there's a tremendous amount of pressure on the people around the president to change this cabinet, to get some more people in here, some fresh blood, some clearer thinking. Or they worry they're just going to get wiped out. And as we're reporting this morning, day one, Democrats will impeach him. I don't think he cares that much. He's been impeached before. He'll survive it in the Senate. But that's the fate. And he can ignore the subpoenas. Oh, his friends and family can't. All those companies can't.
You know,
like, he's coming for a political hell, and that's going to be tough.
well, you know, it's going to be difficult on one side of it. On the other side of it, Donald Trump even told me after he got elected that he understands that it was all the trials, it was the perceived political persecution that got him elected president. He said, if they only charged me with one crime, I'd be in big trouble right now. But they came after me time and time again. And I wonder, Jim, if there's not a part of him that's thinking, okay, I'll be much better fighting against a Democratic Congress where they're trying to impeach me and they'll never succeed. I'll win there, too, and my numbers will go up. So I'm just wondering, because at this point, it would seem that Donald Trump in the past would have backed down and would have figured out a way to go into Iran for 2 weeks and come out. Now, the further we get into this war, and I will say strategically, there are a lot of our allies in the region, the UAE, the Saudis, others, that are glad he's staying in there and not cutting and running, because that would even be a bigger long-term disaster. But I'm just curious, does it seem to you that he actually is focused more on his legacy of being the one president that can do what 7 other presidents have not been able to do with Iran since 1979? And if he loses the midterms, okay, they're going to impeach him again once, twice, 3 times, and he's going to win all of those, and his numbers are going to go up.
I just don't think that's how he thinks. I've seen no evidence whatsoever that he spends time thinking about his legacy or even thinking about 1 or 2 weeks from now. He's very reactive to what's sitting in front of him and where he can use the powers of the presidency to do what he wants to do on his term, or just pick up the phone and try to shape public debate, public discussion, usually around him. You're definitely right that he's probably in a better political position when he's fighting Democrats who are coming at him from 1,000 directions. I would say that strategy works better when the economy is strong and when people feel like prices are coming down, unemployment is low, that their prospects of getting better pay and a better job are higher. I think that is the big problem. Jonathan Lemire talked about it earlier. Remember, the central promise of this presidency is I'm going to focus on the working class, I'm going to tame inflation, and we're not going to go into foreign wars. None of those have happened. That's not a political statement. That's an empirical statement. Go down that list. It's absolutely true. And that's why he's in the political jam that he's in. And now his political jam is a Republican political jam. And I think it's going to be really hard to extricate yourself. Even if you get out of this war, the second order consequences of what's happened in the Gulf and what's happened in that region, that's years. That's going to affect oil prices for years. It's going to affect Middle East infrastructure building for years. It's going to affect our own economy for years. The New York Times has some wonderful reporting by Jonathan Swan this morning just about how much munitions we've blown through in the Middle East, and we've blown through so much of the munitions that government officials think it might be impossible for us to defend Taiwan.
What stands out in this moment isn't just the uncertainty of the war, it's the growing disconnect between leadership and reality. When a president is asked a straightforward question, how long will this take, and responds with deflection, media attacks, or boasts about unrelated metrics like the stock market, it signals something deeper than frustration. It suggests an unwillingness, or perhaps an inability, to confront the core issue directly. Because the truth is, timelines matter, not as a political talking point, but as a measure of accountability. When deadlines are repeatedly promised and then quietly abandoned, people notice. And when those same questions are dismissed as fake news, it doesn't discredit the question, it weakens the credibility of the answer. At the same time, there's a kind of insulation that seems to have taken hold. Surrounded by allies and affirmations, leadership can begin to lose touch with the urgency felt outside that circle. Inside the room, everything may sound like progress. Outside, people are dealing with rising costs, economic anxiety, and the uncertainty that comes with a prolonged conflict. That gap between perception and reality is where trust starts to erode. The economic dimension makes this even more pressing. When a large majority of people believe the economy is worsening and directly tie that decline to ongoing decisions, it becomes more than a policy debate. It becomes a political liability. Inflation, energy prices, energy, and basic affordability are not abstract metrics. They are daily pressures, and they shape how people evaluate leadership far more than speeches or headlines. What's also notable is how reactive the situation feels. Rather than a clear, forward-looking strategy, the approach often appears driven by the moment, responding to criticism, shifting narratives, and managing perception. That might work in short bursts, but it's difficult to sustain, especially during something as complex and high stakes as a war. And then there's the broader consequence. Even if the conflict ends tomorrow, the ripple effects won't. Markets adjust slowly. Global relationships shift permanently. Domestic confidence takes time to rebuild. The cost of uncertainty doesn't disappear just because the fighting stops. Ultimately, leadership in moments like this isn't just about control, it's about clarity. People don't expect perfection, but they do expect honesty about where things stand. And right now, that clarity feels like the one thing still missing.